Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. This is Grandpa Jim with part 2 of the Chronological Gospel. This is available at A Rude Awakening .org. Michael Rood was the one that researched this and wrote it out. This is going to be a little different again, a little different what we're used to. The title is Samach the King. The Old Testament calls it him the branch, and in the New Testament it says that the believers were called Nazarenes, but that is not exactly what happened here. They lived in a village in Israel. The Jewish people did, and Joshua grew up in that area. That was it was a settlement of Jewish people that were getting away from persecution. Well, let me just start reading. Matthew, the Samach the King. The Gospel of Matthew introduces the Messiah as a king from heaven as he lays down the rules of the kingdom over which he will reign forever. Matthew's record begins by establishing Yeshua's lineage from King David through his only earthly parent, Miriam, or Mary as we know her, the daughter of Joseph ben Yaakov. This is Hebrew names for Joseph. All direct descendants of David through Solomon. The record of the Babylonian astronomers delivering a royal treasure to the young king sets the stage. Jeremiah prophesied that the Messiah, or the Samach, that's spelled in Hebrew Tzemach, Samach, the T is silent, would be a king out of the lineage of David. I will raise unto David a righteous branch, or Samach. A king shall reign and prosper, and he shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In Jeremiah 23:5. The Gospel of Matthew is written in narrative form rather than chronological sequence. In Mark, the Samach is the servant. It's different roles that he represents. The Gospel of Mark introduces the Messiah as a servant, no lineage, no fanfare. He is just doing the mission that he was sent to accomplish. Immediately, forthwith are the words Mark chooses to typify Yeshua's actions. There is no grass growing under his feet. He has exactly 70 weeks, 490 days to complete his mission. We covered that in the first part. If you missed that first part of the Chronological Gospel, that will explain this statement here, 490 days. It's not 3.5 years as Rome says it is. That was a fabrication, and it's been believed by everybody. To complete, he has 490 days to complete his mission, or all is lost. Zechariah prophesied that the Messiah, the Samach, would be the servant of the Most High. Behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch, or the Samach, in Zechariah 3:8. The Gospel of Mark is written in chronological sequence. In Luke, the Samach is the Son of Man. The Gospel of Luke introduced the Messiah as our example, the Son of Man, who demonstrates how to live the rules of the kingdom. And he didn't break his father's commandments. He lived by them. That's a fabrication also. modern fabrication. Luke's record begins by establishing that both Zechariah and Elisheva were blameless before Almighty uh, in their compliance with all the commandments in the Torah, including the additional statutes applicable only to the priesthood. Yeshua's supposed lineage in Luke 3:23 through his stepfather Joseph ben Eli, a direct descendant of David through Nathan, different family line than Mary was from, denotes the shadow of the illegitimacy under which the Messiah lived. It was supposed that he was the child of Joseph conceived out of wedlock. Though he appeared to be just a man among men, yet he shall build the temple of Yahweh. Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, it's pronounced here. Zechariah prophesied that the Messiah, the Samach, would be not only a man, he would be the man. Behold, the man whose name is the branch, or the Samach, shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of Yahweh. Zechariah 6:12, part B. The Gospel of Luke is written in chronological sequence and punctuated as the book of Acts by summary statements. In John, the Samach is the son of Elohim. The Gospel of John introduces the Messiah as the incarnation of the eternal Word, by whom, through whom, and for whom all things in the physical universe were created. That Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. John 1:1 describes this point that he created all things, and all things were created for him. He was the Elohim of the Old Testament. That may be a surprise to some, but the one that spoke at Mount Sinai was the one that became Yeshua. The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us as the prophet of whom Moses prophesied. John introduces Yeshua with the testimony of John the Baptist, or Yochanan ben Zechariah, who declared to an entourage of Levites and priests that when he immersed Yeshua, he saw the messianic sign that had been revealed to him by the Spirit. The day following John's testimony, he saw Yeshua when he returned from his 40-day wilderness experience. John did not herald him as as he heard from heaven, but the Lamb of Elohim, the sacrifice without blemish, who would atone for the sins of the world. Isaiah prophesied that the Messiah, the Samach, would be the one who would purge the blood and wash away the filth of the people by the blood of the innocent lamb, the sinless Son of the Most High. In that day shall the branch, Samach, of Elohim be beautiful and glorious. Elohim shall wash away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall purge the blood from the midst of Jerusalem. That's Isaiah 4, verse 2 and verse 4. The Gospel of John is written in precise chronological sequences, detailing the Messiah's going up to Jerusalem to each one of the required pilgrimage feasts. Each of these events can be precisely documented to the very day of their occurrence on both the Julian and astronomical um, decimal calendar, the time clock of astrophysics, and astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar, in short, the Creator's calendar. This is, maybe you don't understand that, but that's also detailed in this book. It has charts and everything of this calendar that has been researched out and found to be that it's based on sighting the new moon in Jerusalem in the spring when the barley is Aviv, as the Bible calls it, which is ready to harvest. It's brittle and ready to harvest. The Julian calendar's accuracy in determining the exact day of the week during the first century is better than 1/1,000,000th of a day, while the Creator's calendar, based on the illumination of the new moon as seen from Jerusalem, can only be mathematically calculated back into the first century with far more precision than can actually be detected by the human eye. The synchronization of these two ancient calendar systems now uncovers breathtaking detail hidden for millennia from the gospel records. Mark, I think he describes in here a little later how that he can do that so precisely, and if it doesn't, I will describe it for you. Matthew, Mark, and Luke primarily details the events between the feasts of Yahweh, while the Gospel of John shows the Messiah going up to each of the feasts in Jerusalem. The Acts of the Apostles, the 70 weeks mission accomplished. The 70 weeks ministry of Messiah is not fulfilled until Yeshua baptizes his followers with the Holy Spirit at the feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot, as the Hebrew calls it. In the book of Acts, the Apostles, Luke shows us the life and death struggle that took place as the followers of Yeshua learned to walk by the Spirit the hard way. That's the way we all have to learn it, is by the hard way. But you need to use the manual. When you get a new car, you use the manual. The manual is the Holy Scriptures. After being clearly instructed to wait in Jerusalem for the promise of the Father, the disciples grew impatient in the 10 days leading up to the feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot, and decided to choose a successor to Judas. Praying, yet receiving no guidance from heaven, they decided to take a vote, and they chose a replacement for whom we never hear again. In the book of Acts, we see demonic possessions, disobedience, deception, and death, but we also witness miracles, deliverances, and victory. This is what life looks like with the Spirit of the resurrected Messiah dwelling in believers. The book of the Acts is still being written today by heavenly signs who are going to urge us to fully engage in the glorious battle for the kingdom. It is a battle. It's an everyday battle. Unless we know the Scriptures and live by them and walk by them, you can't win the battle. The revelation of Yeshua Messiah, the Samach, the coming judge. The chronological gospel declares that Revelation is the fifth gospel. It says the Gospel of Revelation is written in precise chronological sequence with several parenthetical sections illustrating cause and effect. The Revelation chronology begins with 7 letters to the 7 Messianic assemblies in Asia Minor. John then details the events that transpires as Yeshua rips 7 seals from a scroll of eternal significance. the specific events play out across the stage of the planet Earth at the stripping of each seal. What is happening? He defeated Satan when he came out of the wilderness after a 40-day and 40-night fast. When at the end, Hasatan or Lucifer offered him the world as ownership. In fact, he owned it himself. And he told him to get the hint, Satan, it is written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him only shall you serve. So he didn't bow to him like Adam and Eve did. When the seventh seal is loosed, 7 angels blow 7 trumpets are introduced. 6 angels blow their trumpets in succession, and then 7 thunders follow. When the 7 thunders are accomplished, the 7th and the last trump finally sounds on Yom Teruah, and the saints are miraculously saved from the wrath to come and gathered to the sea of fire and glass. That's in Revelation. I believe it starts in chapter 15, I believe. Maybe gives it here pretty soon. After that, 7 angels pour out the contents of the 7 bowls full of smoking wrath of the Almighty into the inhabitants of the earth. This is the day of Elohim. This is when he has his day against the residents of the earth that have rebelled against his instructions. When the wrath is concluded on Yom Kippur, the bride dresses for the marriage supper of the Lamb after the 7-day wedding feast of Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot. Yeshua returns to earth to rule with the Torah and a rod of iron, but he doesn't return alone. The bride has married Yeshua because we don't do idol worship. We're called the Virgin Bride. It's a mystery. It's a paraphrase, or not a paraphrase, but it's a mystery that is a little hard to understand, but one day we will. It's a spiritual matter. It's not a physical matter. Jeremiah prophesied the Messiah, the Samach, would be a judge out of the lineage of David and would execute judgment and pure righteousness through the entire earth. He's going to start that rule by killing 200 million demonic soldiers and the beast and the false prophet in the valley of Megiddo. We're going to be right behind him if we're in the first resurrection. I will cause the branch of the Samach of righteousness to shoot forth from David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in all the earth. Jeremiah 33:15. The gospel record closes the revelation of Yeshua Messiah, which reveals how the Messiah will fulfill the fall feast of Yahweh. At the end of this journey through the chronological gospel, the life and 70 weeks ministry of Messiah we will clearly understand why we were commanded to keep the feast of Yahweh. The prophetic shadow pictures of things to come forever. Come enjoy the feast. I'm going to continue. This is the King James Hebrew version, and it's called the corrected King James version in here. I think I'm just going to summarize this. It's a little bit long. read part of it. In 1611, the scholars completed their translation of New King James Version and published their first uh, vernacular version. The Bible became known as the Authorized Version, acknowledging its commission by King James of England. Less than perfect as any translation invariably is, the 1611 version has been repeatedly revised and corrected since its original publication. As the English language developed and spelling was standardized, archaic forms and words were changed to provide a more comprehensive text for the general public. Although the British law prohibited the exclusion of any of the books from the original 1611 King James Version, the American and British Bible Society removed several books from the 1880 edition and from all subsequent publications. Once these instrumental historic books were removed, modern readers were bereaved of essential and contextual information necessary for a full information and interpretation of the gospel. Today, the feast of Hanukkah, John 8:12 uh, and 10:39, that Yeshua kept in Jerusalem in spite of the Pharisees' threats to kill him, is an enigma to modern Christian church. The Chronological Gospels, the life and 70 weeks ministry of Messiah, utilizes every verse in the Gospel record from King James Version, and it's assembled in chronological order. The King James appeared for the first time in this publication. Is the author's modernized version of the King James Version. The KJH follows in the tradition of several post 1611 King James versions by further updating archaic English forms, reintroducing valuable ancient Hebrew forms, and correcting and standardizing Hebrew name pronunciations. In the later editions of the King James Version, when words that did not appear in the original text were added, for clarity they were italicized by the translators. The King James, the corrected King James Version maintains the same protocol, but also brackets add, in parentheses, added explanatory phrases where footnotes would be cumbersome to the reader. The corrected King James Version is a critical, dynamic translation that attempts to capture the meaning of the original phraseology and return life and emotion to the constructions that were embedded within the Elizabethan English. The King James, the corrected King James Version updates the language of the King James Version without dumping down the text. Proper names are added in italics when relative pronouns call for clarity, and most important, the corrected King James Version utilizes the Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek texts that were unavailable at the time of the original James translations. This is what I was telling you I was going to explain to you. So this is going to explain the King James Matthew version in Hebrew. The Holy Four-letter name Tetragrammaton of the Almighty Yahweh, which is in Hebrew Yod He Wav He, which most believe it to be Yahweh, was removed from the Greek and English versions of the Hebrew Scriptures because of the Pharisaic changes, or takanot as it's called, which were forbade to use except under very strictly defined circumstances. You weren't to add to or subtract from the Holy Scripts. Unfettered from the restrictive rules of Pharisaism, uh, the the name is restored to the corrected King James Version in the Hebrew form of Yod He Wav He. And in the Hebrew version, that appears almost 7,000 times. It's called, it's a name that is brought across from the Hebrew uh, as it is. This allows the reader to pronounce the name in accordance with the divine commandment, and his name should be both called upon and made known throughout all the earth in Jeremiah 6:21 and Joel 2:32. This is the position of the corrected King James editors, that the original autographs were without error or contradiction. When apparent inaccuracies occur in any translation, they are usually due to a misunderstanding of the language and the culture of ancient Israel. They may also be due to translation inaccuracy, which are an inevitable part of a translation attempt. Occasionally, they are due to errors in transmission of the original text, some by accidental omission and others by deliberate commission. Every serious student of the Scripture recognizes that the problem exists in various English translations. The Almighty did not shout the commandments from Mount Sinai in the Greek language, nor did Moses record them in Shakespearean English. Consulting earlier texts has proven critical in correcting and conflicts found in many of the English translations. The corrected King James Version is a critical translation that will answer many of the questions that have plagued the Western reader of Scriptures for centuries. The work endeavors to illuminate the living Word with Yeshua Messiah in the heart and mind. I'm going to jump. It says here that the Yod He Wav He appears 6,827 times in the Hebrew Scriptures. The name is usually camouflaged behind the capitalized forms of L-O-R-D or G-O-D in the English versions of the Bible. Both L-O-R-D and G-O-D are non-script titles commonly used to distinguish the pagan deities of many different cultures. The Pharisee rabbis restricted the use of proper name Yod He Wav He or Yahweh earlier in the 2nd century CE. As a result, the pronunciation of the name of Jeremiah prophesied that the holy name of Yahweh would be restored in the last days, and that even the Gentiles would call upon that name, much to the chagrin of religious leaders who still to this day forbid its use in Jeremiah 16:1 through 21. Pronunciation of the holy name. In the 14th century, the rabbis forbade the pronunciation of the name at the time that the Romans punished its articulation with death. They did, however, transmit the pronunciation of the name to their students in secret. Once every 7 years, they would do that. That's taken from the Babylonian Talmud, Kiddushism, Ciddushin 71a. In the two oldest surviving vocalized texts of Hebrew Scriptures, the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex, the name is written as 4 consonants and 2 vowels. The third vowel without without which the name is unpronounceable, is strongly absent or strangely absent. Yet in these same ancient manuscripts, there are a few places where the scribes who heard the name pronounced every 7 years, probably accidentally for subconsciously, inserted the middle vowels. That missing middle word was a long O sound in English, according to scholars at the Hebrew University. The four consonant name with all three vowels supplied from the ancient vocalized Hebrew sources should be pronounced Yah. Well, I don't agree with this change here, but I'm going to say Yahweh with the accent on the last syllable. One day we will hear the name of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh pronounced on the lips of the Messiah himself, regardless of one's preferred pronunciation. The reason Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh brought us out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand was so that the entire world would know his name. The entire world doesn't know his name today. Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. And there is a quite a bit of difference on how it should be pronounced, but most of the sacred name assemblies agree that Yahweh is about as close as we know to get to it. Yahshua stated emphatically that we would not see him again until we say Baruch haba b'Shem Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. Okay, I'm going to jump over to one explanation here in John. In John, I think it's John 4. It corrects the name. Well, that has to do with the changing of the 3.5 year ministry to the 3.5 year ministry from the 70 weeks, and that was where they added an extra feast. I think I covered that in another in the other the first chronological video I did of this. Well, I think that's enough of this here. It's a little complicated and a little hard to believe, kind of, but it's scripture. And his name is not a Nazarene, but a Nazareth. And what that was is a Nazareth is a branch that comes up. This is described in this chronological gospel in another place. It comes up from the original tree, which was David's father, Jesse, who David came through, and Yeshua is through the lineage of David. And his stepfather was through Nathan, and his mother through Solomon, David's sons, both David's sons. And they this chronology is also of his name is also in here, and you need to get your own book to understand this better, because I'm only giving you a thumbnail sketch. This book is available at arootawakening.org through the and I would advise you to get it. It's Chronological Gospel, 2nd edition, the large print. Okay, I think I'm going to end it here, and Yahweh bless. Shabbat Shalom.